This now when shoes.
You're not forced to anymore?
Hey, I see you in a long time. Hey, Monique. Hi, thank you.
What up, man?
Are you
Doing
doing
good?
Yeah.
This guy's in his phone. Good to see you. How are you? Good to see you. Oh, hey, good to see you down here. Good to see you too.
Good yourself.
Texting people.
What?
It's go time. We're texting people.
Yes. We have plenty of time.
I wonder this what happened.
What happened?
I was saying.
Z, how are you? How was your weekend?
Good. And, calculate the time, so that.
Right here talks about automobile.
I got you.
Yeah. I was out of town this weekend. It's like, come on. Usually it's very well attended, but this year they shifted its footprint over. Yeah.
I was kind of concerned about, but it was great. And packed and it's nice to just have that big solid stretch instead of in the past of kind of
Not gonna be stopped.
been a little here and there.
And a few different things I've heard.
I wish I'd been there when they started out. Because we were there like, and the next morning, all gone.
I got a grinder.
It'll clear out like.
Whatever you need.
It was not this show the whole night.
Well, no, but I know. There's a big tile up there that needs to be seen on the laces. I know.
Another one on top.
And it's gonna be like really lumpy. So you, I mean. Get off my phone. You better take pictures of yourself. He's not that cool. I was trying not to be in my shadow.
Interview. Oh, it's got the grout in it.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm saying I put the ground too long, so far, like up under here, lumpy.
The guy that showed up with the, you know, it looks cool. Looks cool.
Thank you. I was like, oh, the shadows in it.
Yeah, the 42 really pops with the ground. Aside from you, no one's gonna, no one's gonna. Send me those videos, I push stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. There's supposed to be some red tile up under there. It's fine.
Good morning, everyone. How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good. We've got a lot of new faces. And we are without a precedent at this moment of time, but that will resolve itself here in a moment. I think the first order of business is maybe to just conduct some introductions. I know we've got a lot of guests in the room today, but for the sake of the design council, we have lots of new members as this is their first appointment, first official meeting with their new appointment. So we are still working on name placards, which will make this very easy moving forward, but just a quick round of introductions. And then we'll move on to the first order of business, which is actually electing a chair and vice chair to run the meeting. But I'm Lindsay Banaka, Director of Arts and Cultural Services for the city and serve as an ex officio member of the design council. Jana, do you want to?
I'm Jana Irwin. I'm the Public Art Manager with the Division of Arts and Culture.
And you'll receive all your communication. You made it here, so that means Jana communicated with you in some form. So please read her emails and answer her phone calls to make sure that this body keeps moving. But then I think maybe we'll just go around the table if you want to introduce yourself, what appointment you're filling, whether you're architect, landscape architect, what type of seat you're in, and then maybe express what your interest is and why you're serving on this board. Bill, I'll put you on the spot.
Sure, I'm Bill Gardner with Gardner Design. I guess I'm filling a graphic design spot, I guess.
Janelle King, owner of the workroom and JK Design and at large.
I'm Ella Monique Backus. I'm an artist. I'm just here for 5 more seconds.
Steve, I'm the engineer. Yep. Armando Mijares, artist, and yep.
Brett Lekowski, Trans Systems, also engineer.
Brent Thomas with Garber, landscape architect.
Jack Land, 310 Architecture, architect.
And then for the sake of just history, Steve and Armando are our reappointed members who have been on this board for many years and have been reappointed. Ella's seat is currently in TBD land, and she's an artist, but does not live within the city of Wichita. So we're working with the mayor's office on a new appointment. But until a new appointment is made, we're lucky that Ella's gracing us with her presence on this very busy day. So we're happy to have Ella here and for all your work on the design council over the last many years. So without that with that covered, maybe we'll just open it up to the group to discuss president and or chair and vice chair for reference. This is purely parliamentary procedure. There's not any additional responsibilities or duties outside of this meeting. It's really just the positions that are running the meetings throughout the year. My recommendation and staff recommendation is that this is an annual appointment, so it's not burdensome on anyone. But starting with today's meeting, run it for a year, and then the body would have the opportunity to elect a new chair and vice chair moving forward. Could be the same person or people, but it doesn't have to. So with that, I'll turn over to you all to discuss amongst yourselves and maybe make a action. If you don't choose someone, we will not be able to conduct business. So Armando, I'm looking at you if you want to take it away. No pressure.
Sure. Okay. Well, Steve and I and Matt, who's not here today, are the 3 board members who will continue. I'm sorry, I know is that you're not gonna be here. And we were asked to, because of the seniority, to step up into the leadership position. Again, it'll be to lead the meetings, really. Make sure that we make it on time. And I don't know, do we nominate each other or what's the?
Yeah.
We haven't been in this position before.
Yeah. So I would recommend that someone from the design council makes a recommendation or an action item, move to appoint X member as chair and X member as vice chair. If you would like to say like, I'm interested in this position, that would maybe help move the process forward. And staff did ask, we have 3 members who have been reappointed, including Matt Cortez, who's not here today, just to keep that seniority in play, just to keep things moving. We asked all 3 of those members to consider the positions, but ultimately this is your first official decision as your design council appointment.
Well, in that case, I'd like to nominate Armando as chair.
I second that. A motion.
Yeah, how quick that was.
Who calls for order? I don't know. Yeah.
Is there maybe we'll just select a cabinet at the same time? Is there a motion for a vice chair?
I'm interested in doing that, the vice chair part.
I would nominate Steve, move to nominate Steve as vice chair.
All right.
I second that.
All right.
Okay.
We have a motion second. Can we all in favor say aye?
Call the question.
Yes. Any questions?
No, that was it. Call the question.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Congratulations.
So moved.
Chair and vice chair.
Great.
Thank you, everybody. Armando, it's your show. Take it away.
Great. Well, again, I guess I just want to welcome everyone to Design Council. I don't know if anyone has served in the council before. I know, Janelle, you have, so welcome back to Design Council. And but yeah, we'll just, I'll do my best to explain some of the new changes that we've made over the last couple of years. Since Lindsay has been in her position, there's been a lot of procedural changes that we've established, mostly to make sure that we are opening the process for different artists in the community to have opportunities to participate in the public art program, but also as Design Council to really shape what this art program will continue to be.
Okay.
So as we go through the agenda, I may, pause and explain a couple things just so that you have more context about why certain things on the agenda, what are the things that we're looking for as a council. So with that, we'll, I guess, officially start the meeting at 10:06 and with a new chair and vice chairperson. The first item on the agenda, well, the third item on the agenda would be to approve the minutes from July 1st. Yes, we're the 3 that were present in that meeting. They could really attest that the minutes are correct. We have a motion to approve the minutes as presented. So moved. Okay.
We have a second.
I'll second.
Great. Second, any discussion on the motion? Everybody say, in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Alright. Passes. Minutes presented. Yep, fourth item, we're gonna look at the library branch improvements. So this is one of the things, I'll just give a little explanation, context of what's going on here. As we established this new process for the RFQ, one of the snacks we had is the RFQs were going out for bids. And by the time we get to review the applications that are coming in, the vision for the projects was set. And as design council, then we had a lot of questions about how was the budget divided? How were the areas for the art decided? What was the vision for the project? And by the time we were receiving the applications for art, all those discussions were already had without the council input. So there was a lot of questions that we had that felt a little bit late. So because of that, we have this new procedural process where they bring to design council the RFQ before they send it out to the public. So that gives us a chance as a council to review it, see what the scope of the project is, what is the vision for the art that is going to be in there, the intention, and be able to have any input as to whether we feel that that is a good stewardship of the money or if it needs to be changed in any way. So this is one of those items with the library branch improvements. They're presenting us with the scope of the project, the areas that they are looking at incorporating art, and the budget. So this is an opportunity for us to look at that and see if it's something that we feel is appropriate for.
Rhonda, there are two parts to the library branch project. So they're going to be presenting the architectural designs for Alford and Angelo. They've already done that for Rockwell.
Yes.
And then the second part of that is the RFQ for all three of those branches.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. And so with that in mind, we also asked to look at the design concepts for all these projects. That gives us an opportunity to look at their finishes for walls, for furniture, et cetera. And again, giving us an opportunity as design council, we're not only reviewing the public art, but overall the design elements and aesthetic improvements for each project. So thank you for that clarification, Jenna. So those are the two things that we'll be looking at. Yeah, so with the first item, we have Angelo and Alford architectural designs.
Hello, I am James Byer, and this is Allison Raccoon. I am the project manager on these projects, and she is the interior designer.
We were both with that. Even talked to quite a few of you last month about Rockwell. So we're back to talk about Angelo first.
So we're just going to hop right in. So this is the Alfred Branch renovation. So it is located on South Meridian Avenue. I just want to point out, part of this project will be to add a new drive here on this winding road that goes back to the YMCA. We've been told that there is wayfinding issues, and a lot of people miss this drive and come through this back part and then have to loop around. So
That's
one of the improvements. So the existing building here at Alfred is largely designed with aviation as a concept. There are a lot of improvements that will be made. A big ask has been to improve the lighting, improve the acoustics, and this front desk. So here is the existing floor plan. The area that is hatched is not part of this scope. But as you enter into the space, you see that the service desk is a radial form, which is generated throughout the entire building. The front desk currently has too much space behind it and is not very functional. So we will be taking out the front desk and incorporating a new front desk. We will be going through all of the stacks area, the children, adults, and teens, and doing new finishes. And I'm going to go ahead and go forward. And we will be incorporating new meeting rooms, study rooms throughout the branch.
One of the asks that we got in the community survey, so one of the focuses of this branch is workforce development. And so lots of meeting rooms are needed. There's training, job applications, filling out paperwork and forms. And so that was one of the big asks that we received during the initial planning phase. So with that, you can see the new meeting room space and study rooms. The updated service desk, pull back column a little bit, and then there'll be a dedicated space. There we go. There's our mouse. There's dedicated teen space here. So you walk in these main doors, service desk, dedicated teen space, meeting rooms, improved gathering space. This room and this room are existing, but then we're adding these two additional rooms. Reducing the stack space. Right now, if you remember on the previous slide, it was kind of a sea of stacks in there. So we're breaking that up a little bit and working with the operations manager to get the adequate number of stack space. Then improvements in the children area and bringing a new family room to that space. And then the community meeting room down here will also be part of the project and receive new finishes. So as James mentioned, the namesake for this library was Boeing for a long time and was really influential in the aircraft industry. He's credited Boeing around during kind of a difficult phase. So you can see on the exterior of the building, there is a strong aircraft homage that was being paid there. But once you get to the inside of the building, which you can see here, wasn't being translated as successfully inside. So we're looking to take what the precedent that was already set on the exterior of the building and bring that inside. So the concept that we looked at for this, we were originally looking at more of an aviation concept, but in discussing the users, they wanted it to feel a little bit warmer than what we had initially proposed. So we came up with this horizons concept that we're bringing through. The stacks in this building will be reused, the shelving. So we needed to incorporate those finishes into our interior palette, which you'll see. So this is how we're translating that inside, going with several new carpets. The other thing we really are being careful with when it comes to the finishes here is, as you saw, there was an area that's not in scope, and we don't want there to be a clear delineation of this is where the budget ran out, or this is where the budget didn't carry into. So we'll be really careful with these finishes to make sure that they integrate to what's already there also. So a variety of new carpets and flooring to define the space. The paint colors will be, right now you saw there's just a lot of different colors going on in there. So streamlining that, not taking that away, but streamlining that, making it feel a little bit more cohesive. This is the existing stack color that we're working with. So bringing in the colors and then pulling in an accent wall covering in a little booth nook where people can sit. Questions on Alfred? We need to ask at this point that Alfred.
Could you speak up? I'm sorry.
We need to ask at this point that Alfred be moved.
Let's see.
We have a bundle of action item, but they can be separated depending on.
Do we have any discussion on this, Brian?
The architectural side, The beauty of the Alfred building before was the visibility from that service desk. Putting that pod meeting rooms, has that been discussed in regards to those
Guidelines.
sidelines?
Yeah, that's something that we talked about with the branch, yeah. And that's another reason, yes, the pod will obstruct that, but everything else, kept on radial access. But yeah, we discussed visibility and how to ensure safety. That pod there in silence.
Other comments, questions? Okay, go on to the next one. And if you don't mind speaking closer to the microphone so that it's also being recorded so we can get the audio great. Thank you.
This is Wichita Public Library Angelo Branch renovation and addition. This site is just south of 21st Street and north of Side Street. The building was built in 1996 with the designated to Maya Angelou. And as you can see throughout the branch, her art is very evident. Pieces of her and pieces of her on the exterior. Here you can see this mural. Part of our scope is to take this new service desk and relocate it. As you can see when you come in, currently the center of the building has stacks as you enter. And below that is the computing area. And as you move to the west, you can see the stacks throughout. Something I want to point out here is that you don't have sight lines throughout the building on the service desk, which is part of our new design. So we relocated the service desk to be the center of the building. So as you enter into the building, you're greeted by the branch manager, whoever is also there working that day. As you move to the north, you can see the family zone. It's important that there are sight lines to the family zone. Moving to the program room, we have taken the existing wall and we'll be incorporating forefront system into the room to gain visual.
Right now, they are not able to use this room after, because often, like, they're not able to let the community in there when it's not being programmed because nobody can see in there for security. So now this will become another programmable space that we can use.
So moving back towards the west, the stacks have been put at a 45-degree angle to provide visual from the front desk. The computer area, it was a request that this be within proximity to help users at the computer stations. And as you can remember from the previous slide, the service desk wants to be in relationship to the computing station. Moving further west, we will be adding a sunroom as requested by the libraries. This will be for reading, studying, book clubs. And then you have adult stacks moving to the south, and then the incorporation of a new study room and a remodel of the staff area.
One thing to point out at the service desk, transparency, visibility, that was all a big concern. And if any of you jumped ahead to the art RFP, you've seen there's a 3D view that shows this a little bit better. But this wall right here behind the service desk is a 44-foot knee wall so that they can see behind them. And then there will be glass panels that go from the top of the knee wall to the ceiling on either side. That's part of the art RFP is to have a graphic applied to this that we translucent, so there will be a lot of visibility and transparency back there. But also we want the staff to feel safe and not like they're exposed behind them. So we worked with them to help kind of visibility and transparency and security, and also ability to pop back there and help the users on the computer, but also help them feel safe while they're there.
This is a elevation of that new sunroom that's going in on the west side. So the plan here is to just integrate it within the existing materials palette and make it seem like it's been a part of the building.
So the concept that we are working with for this branch is to bring the precedent and the aesthetic that has been set by this mural that was added in 2021 to bring that inside. Right now, that mural is such a graphic defining element of the street. And when you go inside the branch, it doesn't feel there's no connection right now. So we, if you read the quote, tapestry is the element that we took from that and how we can integrate that into the inside and carry that inside. So we're pulling from color, we're pulling from of the mural, we're pulling from the concept of the mural and bringing that element inside tapestry. So you can see in the bottom left here are some pieces that are already inside and established on the outside. You can see the color scheme we're pulling from. This is just an example of how tapestry could work its way into artwork. We're not proposing the specific artist or anything like that, just showing how this tapestry element can translate to so many different building elements inside. And then this is a color example that we gave for the mural. We wanted to set the precedent that this is a very colorful graphic vinyl when you walk into the space, because it will set the tone and it will be the first thing you see when you walk into this space. So this is how that is translating into physical materials within the space. We have a field carpet and an accent carpet, and this accent carpet from the main entrance, it's a very symmetrical axial building, and so lead you straight in from the front doors to the front desk. And then the wall behind the front desk, that new wall I talked about, is going to be painted this hot pink color to bring that in. We'll work with the artist. As the artist is selected, these paint colors can also adapt to how what the mural ends up being on the vinyl behind the reception desk. So you can see the colors and how we're proposing to bring those in. The main field color will be this neutral, and then any of these accents will just be pops and concentrated area. And then the front desk piecework, which we're keeping more simple so that the art can shine in the space. Any questions on Angela?
What artist work is this that you have here with the?
Her name is Victoria Villanueva, I believe is her name. But again, she's not local. She's not somebody that we're specifically proposing. Like how she integrated tapestry into her artwork.
Orlando, I've got a question for you. On a project like this, I ask you this as a muralist, is it a challenge when palette is established that you go in and you have to adjust to, or if you look at this as a more holistic project, is it something where your palette is still somewhat flexible to work with the artist's palette?
I think the keyword here, at least in this, it says possible color inspiration, right? So it's kind of leaving it open for the artist to work within the palette, or to, that's how I read it. I don't know if that's the intention, but so long as it's open, I think, okay. Cool. Yeah.
One thing that we were really intentional about here with the finishes is you'll see, yeah, there's a blue carpet that will be incorporated, but other than that, all of the color is paint at this point. And so that helps with longevity. If in 20 years, some things need to change, paint colors need to change, that's the easiest material to change. But also, as we're working with the artist, that's one of the final elements. So if we need to do colors to go with the mural, then that's obviously very doable as we get down the road.
I know from a similar project I worked on, I know that we worked with interior designer to look at their color palette for the furniture or the finishes, and then we pulled from that for the artwork inside. Yeah, I think so long as it stays open, right, as a suggestion and not a have to use this.
Anything we wanted to communicate with that, and the intent was putting that in there was we want color. This space needs color, this mural needs color, it's so cool with a lot of color. That was the intent, but I'm putting possible color. Let the artists know, hey, we're gonna want some color for this.
How far within the building are you doing the finish updates?
So the only space that's excluded right now are the toilet rooms, the mechanical room, and then the staff area is an alt. So it's possible that the staff area will not be part of it, but everywhere else is included in the project, so.
Question, is the secondary entrance right here is on the south side, is that being improved at all?
There are not currently any improvements slated for that. One thing to point out on the north side, and this,
I didn't even know that.
this is an ongoing newer development. We've always been planning to place a new door here, so right now this is just a storefront window. We're gonna replace that, pull it out, put a new door in, and there will be added to the side of the building. It will wrap around here, which this is a very new development, like as of last Thursday. So we're still working on the design of that, but the plan is that it will wrap around and you'll be able to see it from 21st Street and from when you're inside the library branch and from when you're inside the sunroom. Really nice dynamic element there.
They currently fire exits, or is the main entrance truly on 21st? Because I guess I'm imagining wrapping around.
So this is that new north area where we talked about putting the kindergarten. The main entrance is right here
Okay, thank
or right here. So
Thank you.
Is the artist integration just the class? What is the scope of the artist work?
yeah, do we want to, we'll touch on that when we get there.
Got it.
There is another project. Right.
As far as the renovation, is there any other questions? Okay, then we can move to the second item, the art elements.
We need to.
Right, then we're gonna do it as a packet, right?
Either way you'd like.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Is there any landscape architecture to the exterior of these buildings?
So the Angelo will have the community garden, yes.
Okay.
Well, why don't we separate them and make a motion for the design concepts, and then we keep the art on a separate item, yeah? Yep. So do I have a motion to accept the designs as presented?
Yeah, I'd make a motion that we approve.
Second that.
Second that. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Then we can move on to the art elements and the RFQ. Okay.
So also administering the art review. So you all received a copy of that ahead of time to look over. So this is the call summary. The call is for all three branches, so this will be for Rockwell, Angelo, and Alford. All three branches are included in this. This walks through, the first page walks you through the timeline, some history on the project, and then the statement about the capital art improvement plan. The art review, the plan is to issue that a week from today. We'll incorporate any suggestions or recommendations based on this. And then application deadline will be September 13th. We get a we're planning on all projects installing in June of 2025. And then the budget for all three is 179,100 divided between all the bridges. And as we get into it, we'll see where that money's going within each bridge. So geographically, we opened this up to all US-based professional artists. Okay, so this we divided it into 3 areas. So this is the Rockwell branch, just giving you a little bit of history about it. This is taken directly from the library sites. And then we talk about the primary focus branch, and then a little bit of history about each building, and how, what the history was built and what the current scope and intent are. Each branch, you'll see this is the common theme. We have an overall map with numbers assigned to each art piece, a brief, like number 1 is the team window graphics, this is the budget, here's a brief description. And then after that, it gets into more detail for each space. So these are the teen window graphics at Rockwell. This is the first time they'll have a dedicated teen space, and we want to clearly say through design and art that this is a teen space. Yeah, so that's what we're looking for that. There is also a fireplace, if you remember, at Rockwell that will be getting a new surround part of our project, and so we're looking for art about the fireplace. If you need me to go into more or less detail on each of these, just let me know. Feel free. And there will be a children's area at Rockwell for a mural along the wall of the stacks. This will be similar to what was done in Evergreen recently. And then there is an enlarged community room at Rockwell as well. If you remember that, so we're looking for some art inside the community room, and then in the lobby at the entrance to the community room. The other thing we're looking at Rockwell is an outdoor sculpture. So if you remember from our site plan, this is 9th Street. Right now, the entrance is on the south side of the building. So part of our architectural intent with the updates to Rockwell is to bring a little bit more life to that north side and give it a little bit more presence from the from 9th Street. So if you have a sculpture out there, this will further that north side. Any questions about Rock? Oh, then this is the material palette. This is exactly what you guys saw last time. So just putting that in there so that the artists have an idea of where we're headed. Any questions on Rockwell?
I'm curious just if you could tell us more about how you went about dividing the budget into these. This is probably the one that has the most items. Yep.
So that the overall pot of money, when we assigned it to each branch, we assigned it it's related proportionally to the construction budget. So that's how we divided it up within each branch. Now, once we got to the branch, we have this pot for Rockwell, lining it to pieces. Jana and I worked together based on what she's seen historically with other artists, a call for artists, and then what we were.
I'm going to ask for some clarification just because I'm new to the council. As I look at this, I'm seeing the overall budget, all 3 of these. And I'm seeing that on the RFQ, and it's an RFQ, not an RFP, right?
Oh,
You are looking for an interest in which of these parts and pieces that artist is interested in. And that you're looking at this more as a gallery than a cohesive project at each of the sites. In other words, if you go to the Rockwell, you've got a total of 7 different art locations. Potentially you could have 7 different artists with 7 different ideas going into one location, as opposed to an artist going in with an idea that might be cohesive or comprehensive in there. Or how is this in when the person submits RFQ? Are they just submitting that for one of the 3 or just areas they're interested in projects?
I guess I can speak to what we've done in the past.
Sure.
And it kind of depends on each project. The design team gets to decide if they want to assign it to a single artist or if they want to open it up for several. In previous projects like this, where there's different elements, is my understanding that any artist could apply for one or for all 6 elements. And then the committee gets to decide, who gets what. So it could be that an artist, maybe it's selected for 3 projects, or maybe it's selected for just 1. But it's my understanding that each one it's up for grabs for any artist.
And that comes back to us or it comes back to the architects?
So right now, the process is that once, if we approve the RFQ, or if whatever we discuss about, I'm sorry, the RFQ, it'll be posted online, and then they create a committee internally with stakeholders from people in the community, design professionals, people from their company, and then they'll look through through all the different applications, the RFQ, and select and narrow it to, well, let me ask that, are you guys looking at narrowing, this is an RFQ, right?
It's an RFQ.
Yeah, so then you'll narrow it to some artists that then get full proposals. That's what we've done in the past now. It's that after the RFQ is out, the committee that is formed with stakeholders will narrow it down. And then those artists will then be asked to submit a full proposal.
Yeah, so there's a timeline.
Select from those.
Yeah, well,
But these are smaller budget items, so I don't know how that's gonna be handled.
The budget's not large enough with these three branches to pay stipends for full concept proposals.
Say that again, Jen, I'm sorry.
The budgets aren't large enough on these three branch projects to warrant paying artist stipends for full design concept proposals as finalists in this process. So we will be selecting based on qualifications.
Okay, so then they'll submit, whoever selected, then we'll create an artwork and there'll be a process to look for that. Okay, so this is where, it's case to case basis, right? So that's something that we've changed where like each project gets to determine the scope and how the money should be spent. There's some projects where that has $1 million budget for art integration.
Sure.
In that case, when it's the larger budget, then it accommodates stipends for artists who are selected to then submit concept proposals. So they're getting paid for their concept proposals, but it doesn't guarantee that they're gonna get selected, right? So so then in that case, there's two processes. You get the RFQ, artists submit, it's narrowed down to the ones that, the team seems it's appropriate. They get paid a stipend to create a full proposal. Then those are reviewed, and then the committee gets to select the ones that get awarded the job. That's when we have enough money in the budget to do that. In this case, the libraries, they have smaller budgets, and it looks like you guys are just gonna get the RFQ out and then select based on the work, the body of work, and not necessarily a proposal, correct? Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And again, I'm learning, so I'll figure out at what point to interject in here. But as I look at the Angelo project right now, the art that's in there, they're all uniquely cool pieces, but they don't hang together. And as you're trying to build some cohesion on these projects, and you talk about going into, for instance, Rockwell and having 7 different pieces of art in there, my first thought was, boy, it sure be nice if there was some level of continuity in there. Potentially, the same artists were involved in a lead group of those projects in there, as opposed to it turning into a gallery and 7 different people with 7 different ideas coming in and sticking a piece of art here and a piece of art here and a piece of art here.
And that's one of the.
Think about that. I guess what I'm wondering is in the RFQ where it says indicate those projects that you're interested in, if in fact that needs to be shifted to allow for that idea of encouraging a more cohesive solution to these as opposed to partially it out. I also think if you have a very limited budget, it might be more advantageous for somebody to, instead of taking the $2,000 to put a mural on a wall, design it, put it up, to take, that plus that plus that, having a larger budget so that they can spread that effort across a larger group. I know I just dumped a lot there, but I'm just kind of looking at the process and wondering what your objective is. Is your objective to design a building that has some cohesion to it design-wise, or is it to design a gallery? And have a variety of different people put their artwork in.
In the past, but we didn't get this free. And so typically there was already, or there would be an artist assigned to the project that ensured the overall vision kind of was cohesive and came together. Is that still in place?
Yes, sort of. So the new process is that depending on the scope of the project, again, the ones that have the larger budgets get assigned an art consultant. And the art consultant is then who is in charge of creating the scope of work and figure out however the RFQ is going to be designed. With the smaller ones, then it goes directly to an open call for artists, and we don't have an art consultant. In that case, the committee, the selecting committee that is formed by the company leading the project, then that's how you get to have some of that community input and determining what the community wants to see in that space, what kind of art, what kind of style, that type of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's something that is assigned by design council. Once we look at the review, the CIP, and we assign dollars, then we also go and assign whether the project gets a art consultant or if it goes straight to bid.
So I guess, and I'm not gonna try and put words in your mouth, but I hear the concern, like on these other ones, you know, they're more like big impact and a little bit, but the fact that this has got so many multiple pieces, does it make sense to have it piecemeal into 6 or potentially maybe having a couple smaller, or bigger calls with a larger budget so that you see like one artist has like maybe some cohesion through the face or something rather than.
Or maybe.
Is not a consultant.
Yeah. Maybe you can help us, how you arrived to making this decision, some of the conversations that you had to get to this, so that the council kind of knows.
Yeah.
Chanel?
So how we decided locations for each art piece, we talked about, we just sat down as, and with the branch staff and with our design team and just looked at spaces that we thought it would make an impact and talked through those. The thought with breaking one was just to give more opportunities for smaller artists to apply for those or to the more opportunities, the better. If we do one big one, that's going to limit the artists that are able to do that. And I think especially all these branches just have such a connection to their community and their local neighborhood. We really wanted it. We wanted to reach that with the art. But the concern is that it will feel uncohesive. I mean, there is an eclectic nature to uncohesive and eclectic.
And both answers might be right.
Yeah.
You know, there are places for galleries and there are places for,
I think you also have a precedent at the Evergreen Library where multiple artists have come together under one vision to collaborate together in a way that is very cohesive. It's the pillar for where we're aiming, I think, within each of the spaces. Sorry, I'm Jamie with the library.
Well, that's kind of what I was going to say. Is I got to believe that the selection committee is going to select artists that there's a theme or a kind of a theme to it versus just arbitrarily that aren't going to fit together. And I trust the selection committee is going to do that for this particular idea. And I like the idea that there's smaller ones for some of the smaller artists to have the opportunity.
And part of that can come back to the recommendation too, that when we look through the rest of them, making sure that committee plays a stronger hand in directing the overall theme. So.
And with Rockwell, like, as you mentioned, because there are so many pieces, I could see having meetings with people together to kind of talk about this and our overarching concept for the bridge together, and then letting each artist interpret that in a cohesive way.
Maybe that's worth noting, being explicit in the RFQ that, hey, the committee desires or the client desires, there's a cohesive vision. And so, this would be further discussed with you as a group, but just to make sure that that's going to be a serious consideration as far as the vision for what each site ends up being.
Yeah, the process is they're going to shortlist and they're going to do interviews with them. So they're going to have a pretty good feel of what that artist is wanting to bring to this particular.
Correct.
I also think that when we're shortlisting artists, if that's going to be something in the back of our mind, is these play well together, that not, this is out of this left field, this is out of right field, we're going to select them that have a body of work that feels cohesive.
And thank you for the added context. I was one of the artists at the Evergreen Library, and I agree with you. I think it would be important for the RFQ maybe to say that one of the expectations for the artist to at least have some sort of conversation about their vision. That's something that we did at Evergreen. We wanted to make sure that each artist had their own identity and was true to their aesthetic, but we kind of together agreed on, what were the themes that we wanted to address for cohesiveness. So maybe, something on the RFQ that explicitly says that, so that the artists know from the get-go that's an expectation and it's not something that gets dropped on them later on.
They're not playing nice. We can say, no, you can do this.
As an artist, the more artists, get opportunities. I'm all for more opportunities for artists, to have work. And with that, I just a question I have is about the making this a national call for pieces that are relatively smaller, specifically for this library. Since part of the rationale is to maybe have opportunities for artists that, that this is more accessible, right? The budget makes it more accessible for artists who don't have as much experience. Did you consider or talked about making it a regional call versus the national call for this specific branch?
Well, okay, so you'll see as we get into it, this is encompassing all three branches.
Okay.
So this national call is not just for Rockwell, it's for Angelo and Alfred too. And yes, we talked about that. We went back and forth about regional versus national, and it was my understanding that in the past, you haven't gotten as many proposals when it was more of a regional call. And so we wanted to make sure that we got adequate proposals for this and decided to open it up. But there is language, you'll see at the end, that priority is going to be given to people that, even if they are national, that use local resources to support their work. Or if they form a team, they do it with some local resources. So that was the rationale, but we're making it US based versus US based. We talked about, regionally, we talked about saying certain states that would, that we would consider. We just wanted to make sure we got good coverage.
Any other comments on that branch? Yeah.
I was gonna say, on number 6 for Rockwell, if you could include the dimensions of the area where you want the sculpture to be. Because it's so helpful to have all these dimensions, like on each one. So
Okay.
on number 6, if you could add the dimensions there. Then there's one other one. It'd be awesome to have some dimensions. Let's see, what was it? For the teen art element, if that could have some dimensions.
Alfred, where are you on?
At number 2 on Alfred.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
I think, so, we'll see a little bit about that. How much of the space it fills, would it be helpful to just give the space dimensions
Right.
for the wall? It's very ambiguous how much space that it could fill. I would love to fill the entire space. So we think if we just gave like the dimensions of the room, that would.
Yes.
Okay.
The dimensions of the room.
That's item 5.
Item 2 on Alfred and item 6 on Rockwell. Come on, man.
Hold up. Let's finish with Rockwell and then go on to the next one. Yeah, so we don't get
Okay.
confused.
Okay.
So we're in Rockwell and we're talking about adding dimensions for the item number 6,
Yeah.
right? For this sculpture. Just the
Outdoor
Area.
space.
Right. The area where the sculpture should be placed.
anything else on Rockwell?
I think when you, it says it at the beginning, like this kind of like disclaimer that it's gonna include the installation. But it always is helpful, like when you get to a sculpture part, to say, out of this budget, it's gonna come, the footing and how deep we gotta dig in the ground and the engineering, if they have to secure their own engineering and all that type of thing. That's really important to include so that they don't think that they're gonna be able to use this whole budget just for the sculpture, that the footing and the engineering, structural engineering and all that is a part of their costs.
I think that's kind of covered in that page.
It is.
Well, the only analysis is in clarification.
Yeah. Yep, when you have something that's sculptural, that in any of your things that are sculptural, that to make sure you put it there too.
Okay.
So they're not like, what? I didn't know.
That's amazing.
And that's on Rockwell?
I'm just add on Rockwell, and this is from experience on a prior project, and I'm not sure how this, MABC would even be involved in permitting, maybe the foundations or something like that, but we ran into an issue where they considered a small play sculpture, a structure that violated setback standards. So, that might apply here. I don't know if that's worth maybe contacting someone in MABCD to see how they would view that. Especially given the probability of, maybe a 20 or 25-foot building setback along 9th Street. That might be worth looking at just to see how they would handle that. That was not a surprise. It was not a nice surprise at permitting time, so.
Good, thank you.
Okay. Anything else on Rockwell? Okay, great. So can we move on to the next location?
So the next page is Angelo, lots of history on the first page that we just talked about. A lot of the history on this whole. We reviewed it a minute ago. So you can see there are 2 locations for artwork here. The first one are the final graphics that we talked about at reception, and the second one are letters along 21st Street that are to be 36 inches tall and in the colors of the Divine Nine. So one of the things with Angelo is the visibility from 21st Street just isn't great. The mural has helped a lot with that, but a lot of this project is focused on like that or continuing that. So this is that 3D view I was talking about earlier, giving information of the glass graphics. So this is the reception desk. There will be a spot in the middle that's open to beyond, and then there's these 2 5'6" and 7 feet wide glass portions here. So that's where those graphics will go. So the thought on this one and the history behind it, originally we were thinking about doing this image that we had of Maya Angelou, but as we got to talking a little bit more, her imagery, like her face, there are several spots in the building, outside of the building and on the inside of the building where there are portraits of her, and we didn't want to dilute that. So this changed to being inspired by her work, her life, and her activism. So that is the inspiration and the direction given for that. For the exterior signage, much like I mentioned before, this is the view from 21st Street. And so these letters, I didn't specify the material of these letters. I didn't want they have to be fiberglass or they have to be metal. I wanted that to be open to artist interpretation. I didn't want to tie anyone's hands, but wanted to specify that, they have to be durable. They have to be rated for exterior. Those are the 2 elements at Angelo.
Other questions from? I have some about the letters.
Okay.
Just a little confused about the wording in the, I guess question, are you guys providing the design of the letters, then that will get covered, or?
The letters would be supplied by the artist too.
Okay.
Yeah, so we will provide lighting to the place where these letters might need, or electrical as part of the architectural scope. And then, so if lighting is needed, we have a conduit that's ran out there. But yeah, the letters would all be supplied by the artist. Do we need to maybe more language to clarify
Well,
what it is?
and you're specifically saying letters, like you want individual letters, or do you want a sign? I guess that's the confusion where like,
Yeah,
are you
no.
looking for a sign, or you're looking for individual letters?
Okay, yeah, I think I should just maybe change it, what is it, like 36-inch high individual letters spelling out Maya Angelou Library supplied by the artist.
Okay, so I don't know if anyone had that same, but I was a little confused about what you were looking for, a sign or letters.
I think similarly here, having the dimensions of these, when you have here on your aerial map, it says sign, but I think having the dimensions here would help too.
So I'll put the space available on there. Yeah. Okay, so 36-inch high individual letters supplied by the artist. Does that clarify that for you?
Only dimensional at all?
Yes, 3D, yes, multi-dimensional letters, that's good.
And again, is the foundation provided or not?
This will all be art.
Yep.
Thank you.
Just, you're architect, so you probably already thought this out, but 36-inch tall letters and the number of them that you've specified there is going to be about 30 to 40 foot long.
Yeah, it'll depend on the font. The font we used had a 55.
You've already decided what the font's going to look like.
They can choose the font, so we'll tell them the space available. Pick a font. Gotta narrow that Arial or whatever it is.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions for Angelo? Yep. And move on to Alfred.
All right, just to make sure that I have this right, we say 36-inch high, multi-dimensional individual letters provided by the artist, including foundations. That. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, and again, this is what you saw. Alford, similar history to what we just told you. Okay, so the locations at Alford are the children's area. There is we have really high volumes of ceilings here. And so we're gonna have 16-inch high shelving in there. There's a lot of space between the top of the shelving and the ceiling. So this is a great spot for a mural. Unlike Rockwell, there are no windows along this mural, so it is just a nice big expanse, similar to Evergreen, but even higher ceiling. And then we have our teen area. I mentioned before, there's a designated teen area. And it's really an architecturally interesting space in there. So I need to pull that in. So here's the children's room before I get too far ahead. Just showing the dimensions there, the bookshelves below, and the teen art elements. And we intentionally kept this a little bit open. We can see this being a ceiling element. We can see this projecting off of the wall. We can see it mounted to a wall. There's a lot of really unique ways that I don't want to hamstring somebody. We didn't want, stifle creativity in this space. I think this is a space where artist input really could amplify the space. We will add some room dimensions. I think there's also important to note there is a wall over here. I might provide some wall dimensions if it's a wall mounted piece. Just to help clarify that. Do you think that's too open for an artist, or do you think that's open enough?
I think just the dimensions kind of helps really understand the space, the size of it, and what's possible.
For this, if it is a ceiling piece, are there any weight restrictions and will it have that drop ceiling or?
It will have a drop ceiling. Yeah, that's a good point as far as maybe we just say it must. Well, it's not the ceiling. Yeah, there's structure up above and there's roof deck up too, but maybe we need to put a caveat that no additional structure is planned to be added as part of our project. So whatever is proposed are up there.
It is a mural, right?
Identify a weight limit if you already know it, if you already know what it is.
Okay.
But the other thing too is maybe it would help if you, I don't know what the walls are made of, if they're cinder block, if they're drywall, or that's the only other detail. If you already know, what the wall is made out of. I think what you put together is really detailed and comprehensive, and that's really helpful. It's great, actually. I've never seen RFP with this much detail. So that's, I haven't, to have it all the spaces and you can see what it's supposed to look like and the dimensions and all that. I think that is really well put together. Then she went on the detail tip, might as well just put a couple more things on there. And then you will have a very, you know what I'm saying? People know what they're getting into up front. I think it's good. I want to applaud you for that extra work you put into this.
Yeah, we're getting very granular. on
Yeah, I mean, because it's good. We're not trying to say it's not good. This is good. Mhm.
And we just know that, we know they so well at this point that sometimes we just can't, we forget what we've learned in this process. So having somebody who's not as familiar with this is really helpful.
And some of the nitty gritty questions like the wall, what kind of wall it is or the weight limit, some of those things get figured out once the artist is selected and you start designing things and talking with engineers, but it does help to have, as much details as you have.
If you already know, why not throw it on there? You know what I mean?
Anything you know is helpful.
Got the
Come out.
information, you just need to get it there.
Yeah. Well, any other questions on the RFQ for all three libraries?
Do you want me to go through? So this is the last page that I can.
Yes, please.
So we talked about this a little bit earlier, but we prefer to have local artists firms that, will give preference to the artists that use resources that we talked about before. And then, we said we really want people that are new to the field. So we encourage them to apply. We really want them to be, little community pieces and accessible to a variety of people. And then, so the selection process, we talked a little bit about, the selection committee left that open, that we'll assemble that later, who will be on that. And then this is the timeline for that. It's a little bit more detailed than what we provided at the beginning. And then the selection criteria, the submittal content, any questions are due to me a week before, and that's just to give me time to answer it and push all that information out to the artists to give them plenty of time to absorb that information and react to it, where this will be located in the deadlines.
Okay. Well, if there's no other further questions or comments, we can move to a motion. It's gonna be a doozy of a motion. There are so many items. Any recommendations, staff?
Yeah, we're just approving the RFQ.
Right.
I have a quick question, actually. You see where you do have that professional artists new to the field of public art are encouraged to apply. But up above, it says that previous experience working on permanent, and then on the back, it says 6 to 10 total images of past large-scale public art be submitted, incomplete applications not to be considered. I don't know, to me, that sounds a little confusing, like. What's that?
Did it feel contradictory?
I mean, if I were to read it, it says, if you're new and have not done public art, please apply, but then it says, but you must submit 6 to 10 public art comparable. So,
That's the Kansas Yavel bill,
yeah,
or nobody, yeah.
I don't know if there's 6 to 10 total images of past large scale project, or,
We take out the public.
yeah, it just sounded contradictory to me. I would
Yep.
get to that point and be like, oh, never mind.
Maybe we put it out there, like, please note it is a public art. Just so we would have.
Public art or comparable.
I think that would be perfect, or comparable.
Okay.
It's interesting because you have most of your pieces are interior. And so in that instance, you don't really need somebody who does public art. You could just have somebody who does paintings, just like,
I know, I was thinking like the fireplace.
Yeah.
Like, that's just a piece of art.
it could just be that doesn't have to be that they ever did anything outside that had to withstand elements. They could just be like, yeah, I painted my garage, but I'm awesome. I painted my garage. You know what I mean? So.
Part of this communication is once it goes live, staff, Jana does an incredible job of reaching out to local community and our public art registry and encouraging folks to apply. And we think this project's a unique opportunity to get emerging artists into the public sphere. We have a great studio art population here, but haven't maybe bridged the gap into the public art field. And we think that these projects would be a great opportunity to do so. So once it goes live, we send the call out far and wide, and we'll encourage design council to share with your networks as well, because we would really do see this as an exciting opportunity. That being said, it still has to be public art that's accessible and open to all. It still goes through the bid process, and it's a learning opportunity for those emerging public artists to learn how to be competitive.
That's what I'm wondering is maybe it's 6 to 10 total images of past work, art, instead of large scale public art. Maybe it's just, I don't know. Or you put a comment there and add that, I don't know.
I think where you come, this is such a broad ask because there are so many different types of art that we're asking for. I think that there's a way that you can soften that so that for specific, if you're asking for sculpture, you know, that they're applying for, that they have some substantial work done or something, but
Or that, I think we'll soften it to say past work or shareable work, and then say, have a certain action that says, please note it, this as if it was part of a public commission or a public art, or just so that we'll have that context if we need it, but we don't have to make that our only selection criteria.
We are at 11:05. Any other comments or questions on?
I think that I'd move for approval of their RFQ with those modifications.
Any discussion on the motion? No, all in favor, say aye. All opposed? Yep, passes unanimously. Thank you so much for hanging with us. Yes, appreciate your work. Right, so next agenda item number 5 is the Douglas and Catsa Meridian artwork. This is a 30% progress presentation. And we have Kent Williams and
All right, my name is James Wagner. I'm the project engineer for the city of Wichita for the Seneca Meridian project. Give a brief introduction of the project and then some introductions of people, and then I'll hand it over to Kent. So essentially, well, I'll start with introductions. WSP is our consultant on this project. Tyler Both is in the back room here if he needs to answer any questions he's around. Carissa McMullen is the landscape architect that is hired with WSP. I think she was online, and that's Landmark Studios. And then Kent Williams here is our art consultant for the project, who was instrumental in putting together the RFQ for artists for the art portion of this project. And we've selected a couple artists that he will introduce. So introduction to the project, we are looking at kind of transforming Douglas into a three-lane roadway with 1 lane each direction and a center turn lane. And then also having parking along the side of the street that they're kind of there now, but having bulb outs so that it kind of matches what's been done in Douglas, Delano previously, provides safer parking, extended bulb out for safer crosswalks for people walking, and essentially we're going to try to keep all of our landscaping that's there that's possible. So the trees we're going to try to keep. That there may be some exceptions to that, but we're going to try to keep the feel of what's there now, and then also promote the Delano feel through the project. So I'm going to stop there and let Kent start. And Kent Williams.
Thank you, James. And good morning. Thank you all for your continued and new and soon to be continued service on Design Council. So here is a big overview of our project influence area. In some ways, this project is the other end of the spectrum to the one you've just been looking at, this whole area boundary with the orange line is how the Delano neighborhood district is defined. Our project scope is represented with the yellow line, which is a 1 mile corridor of new road improvements and adjacent right-of-way. So in essence, we have a 1 mile long potential project site. That being said, it's a fairly wide right-of-way, but still it's a roadway that's a mile long. On its west edge, we have Meridian, and then the project travels west to east to Seneca Street, where we then essentially connect into the Delano neighborhood and commercial area that has already been improved and has sort of the core established identity. What we'll be looking at today are 2 sites that we have selected. We've been through the RFQ and RFP process and have selected 2 artists' teams for these 2 sites. Site A is our local artist Armando Unares with Del Norte Studio. And site B is Airwork Studio out of Boulder, Colorado. That's George Peters and Melanie Walker, and they're online as well. Our RFQ turned into an RFP. It was a 6-state call: Kansas, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Colorado, Missouri. So we were in the center. We also included Texas as our 6th regional state. We had 19 people that were met our qualifications and criteria. We narrowed that to 6. We had 6 proposals developed. Those were presented to our committee, and we approved 2 from those 6. This is an overview of images that were in our RFP. The idea that Delano has this deep history and the historic context was something that we put forth for the artists to consider. There's also much contemporary activity happening in Delano now, as are referenced here in the 3 images on the bottom of the slide. So we have the old and we have the new. Both are relevant, and Delano specifically embraces their history. And we wanted to make sure that that was given appropriate consideration. We showed here in the upper left the Delano brand that's been established for a long time, and we included that as information for artists to consider. Here's a little bit more context of our site. Some of the identity drivers are shown in site images here. This is more than our project site. This is Seneca, and this is Meridian. So we're now beginning to focus in on that larger Delano neighborhood. We're showing here kind of the pre-established Delano commercial district that goes to the roundabout and on down to the river. We consider that an established identity, and we consider this an opportunity to draw from some of that identity, yet still be appropriate for an area that does feel different. We have a lot of residential in our project scope, whereas there's virtually no residential beyond in the quote established identity area. So here, when we look at our corridor, you see the left half is heavily residential. The right half is much more commercial. And then we have the rail corridor crossing toward the center of the site. Carissa led a tree canopy survey of this site last summer, and we found about 104 trees in the city right of way, and 100 of those are healthy and in good shape. That's really good news. So preserving the existing tree canopy is a driver for the project. How can the art elements respond to that? We want to basically avoid visual conflict with trees and physical conflict with trees. The landscape approach will be collaborative with the artists to support their specific aesthetic intents as the artists have the opportunity to develop their project and their solutions further, which will bring back that final artist solution. This is the 30% intent share for today. Here we're looking at that 1 mile corridor broken into 3 pieces on the slide so that they would all fit. We'll start with site A at Meridian. That we're considering a gateway opportunity to the city, to the district, as this is its western edge at its central corridor roadway, which is Douglas. Site B, we're showing an opportunity zone that is in an area where we do not have a lot of tree canopy. We have a lot more open space. We have a lot more commercial space. And we feel like that's appropriate for a series or a cluster of sculptural elements designed by Airworks Studios. And we'll show you those in more detail. First, we'll take a closer look at the Site A Gateway District element that we've selected Del Norte Studio and Armando to create. This is really a pair of sculptures that sit either side of the roadway within the right-of-way. And here's Armando's work, showing his sculptural approach for that pair of elements that announce your arrival and entrance to or egress from this neighborhood. And you see how powerful that canopy of trees is beyond that as a backdrop for this. Fortunately, this is an open space where no trees would need to be removed to achieve the installation of this pair of sculptures. These are approximately 15 to 18 feet in height. This is part of what Armando submitted in his proposal. Some of his inspirations include the headdresses worn by Wichita First Nations leaders and warriors, and then the iconic Texas Longhorn, as Delano's first real character was born of the Boontown Chisholm Trail pre-Wichita days when Delano was its own community. Site A materials include a variety of possibilities: concrete, mosaic tile, sandstone, brick, with the sculptural element on top of those pedestal material and elements as steel and or aluminum. So that's the site overview. I'll go through site B, and then if we have questions for site A, we can, assuming Armando wouldn't mind recusing himself as your new chairman, he can answer those directly. Site B, this is Airworks Studio, George Peters and Melanie Walker. We've got a general area where their work can be placed. They have not come up with final solutions for where those sculptures will be, but this is what their sculptures look like. These are kinetic works. They're 20 to 23 feet in height. They move in the wind. They're color changing with dichroic plexiglass that is translucent and light catching. And they're coming off the idea of the role of the feather that has existed in indigenous cultures, and also representing concepts of flight. Here's the schematic from their initial proposal, how these could exist in groupings. They can also be serial and spread out with more space between. As the project has evolved and The bulb outs and other curb cuts have been refined. We're very close to being able to tell them specifically where they can and cannot place their sculptures. Here's the diagram of the area that we are highlighting as their available site, with a couple of street views that show how that area opens up into a non-residential, commercial, and mixed-use space. The upper diagram shows how these might exist if they were spread out over several blocks, what we would call a series solution. The second diagram showing how they can be condensed to be clustered and to be effective as a smaller flocking of sculptures. It's an overview of our project. What we're looking for today is your review of our conceptual approach. And with that approval, we will work with the artists to refine and evolve their solutions to be their 90 to 100% solution. We bring that back to you for your approval. Any questions?
Here, I might start. George and Melanie. So these, and I'm just trying to tell from the rendering, these flat or voluminous feathers?
I'm sorry, ask that again.
They're not online?
They should be online.
Yes, we're here.
Yeah, we're here.
Did you hear that question?
I can't tell from the rendering if these are flat, the feathers, or if they are voluminous.
Oh, voluminous. I said illuminated. They're three-dimensional.
Yes, they have
There's
basically three fins.
three fins that are in a triangle. So they look well from below, and, you know, different views down, they'll be very visible.
Thank you.
And I have to answer that this particular site, this is where Armando's monument will be. And we just put this in that area because there's so many trees down Delano. and these would kind of get lost in a lot of the foliage there. So we just wanted to make it in some area, and then it was decided that this would work well in area B.
How does the sculpture move? Is it like a helicopter or is it?
The movement is quite complex, but the reason that we like the cluster is that they would all move in unison with each other because they're all being hit by the same kind of winds. But they normally sit there balanced at about a 45-degree angle if there's no wind. And then they rock up and down and turn as well. So there's quite a lot of movement in them. You can tell, you know, what the speed of the wind is and the direction. So it's kind of a wind indicator that most airplanes would need when landing. But I hope they don't land on Douglas Avenue.
What are they rated? How much wind speed are they rated for?
Well, we've had that engineered out to 120-mile-per-hour winds here in Colorado. And we've done a similar piece for a rec center in a nearby community to Boulder. And we have had over the last, I think this one's maybe 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's about 15 years old. 140, 150, 160-mile-an-hour winds, and they're still doing fine.
Do you know how far back they're going to be from the pole? How far back from the curb is that pole going to be set?
That's a decision once the master plan for Douglas Avenue gets in. But we made a few a couple of illustrations that we sent to Kent that shows two clusters around the railroad area. So there's a couple of green spaces, kind of triangular spaces that we think it would work quite well. Or we could do other arrangements. So that's kind of for later discussion with the art committee.
Is there any concern with the piece hanging outside city right away?
Say it again.
Say again.
Is there a concern with the piece if it's hanging outside of the right of way?
We have to look at that yet.
They will be 5 feet out, and the total length of them is about 10 feet. So they'll be in the
length
middle.
of the feather is
parking.
10 feet.
So they'll be vertically, they'll be right at the curb, I think.
Kent, I think George's comment about them being in a cluster was a good observation. I can't imagine these things being sporadically, dropped down Douglas. I think that an installation, it would make a lot more sense for them to be together and be a lot more impactful.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we agree.
Yeah, there's something really nice about when they're very close together, and they don't really touch each other because of that weighted angle. So they can be 10 feet apart and still have the radius work without bumping into each other. So a group of 3, a group of 4 would be a 40-foot area.
This is less of a question as an observation, but first of all, I love both of these. I think they're beautiful. I think that just outside the scope of this project and was already established, Delano has got such a identifiable footprint. And with the clock tower is already such a great indicator of entrance. To Delano, it's great to see having that landmark on the other side. And so just, I guess my comment would be in both of these. My feeling would be that you're trying to create connectivity throughout that corridor that right now does feel disjointed. And I hear the beauty of the cluster, but also how do you not make it more of a breaking point rather than continued continuity along there. It's my one comment on those, and then on Armando's would be, I like that you've still got a variety of elements that you're looking at, particularly for that pedestal. Somehow, tie back into that clock tower, whether that's through that touch of the brick or in one of your renderings, you have that arch that's a mimic, but somehow that I just feel like trying to create some connectivity.
And that's why I kept open, right, with both pedestals to picking up on the architectural elements with the stone and the brick that you see all over, or maybe some tile, but right, it's tying it back to like echoing.
Yeah.
There.
Do you know the size of that pedestal?
So when the RFP was presented, it had a 6-foot tall pedestal as included as part of the project. So that's why you see that, right? You see that scale of that pedestal there.
Width.
Yeah, it's not totally determined yet. Probably close to like a 5 feet. I guess it'll depend on the engineering, what the size of the weight of the sculpture and whatever that's gonna require. But what was presented on the RFP was a 6-foot tall pedestal, about I think 5 feet.
I think it was,
Was it 6 by 6?
yeah, I think it was 6 by 6 in plan.
Yep, roughly. And that's what I use those dimensions for this concept design, but that might change.
Do you know what your setback is from the curb and gutter is going to be?
Nope, we don't have those details yet.
Look into that pretty close.
Yep. Yeah. So right now you're looking at 30% concept, and then the next steps would be to figure out those details and see how those details will impact the design, how it needs to be adjusted.
Yeah, Armando, on the feather and the curvilinear element, by the way, I love the feel of those two parts of this. Materials, aluminum, what are you looking at material wise?
So I know I want it to be some sort of metal, either powder coated metal or aluminum. Again, I really need to figure out the weight and how that's gonna impact the height and the footing. So
Are you aiming towards any kind of finish?
ideally, this would be a powder coated finish. You know, I don't want it to be I don't want the finishes to be stand out from the character of the neighborhood. For instance, like a stainless steel, right, that is brushed. I feel like that would be maybe too contrasting with the neighborhood. So right now I'm looking at probably hard coated with some sort of color.
I know that you're 30% here and you've still got stuff to go. I gotta say the tall box Delano throws me off on these. They just you've got such a beautiful line kind of going on in there, and just the stacked Helvetica letters on that. I'm kind of going. It seems like, you know, is there a way to kind of get that to feel like it belongs more with the rest of the piece?
Right,
Are you cracking that? It's not a cut. I understand.
I hear you. You know, part of the letters is we wanted to have, it felt like an entrance to the neighborhood, right? I mean, we wanted to kind of establish this is Delano neighborhood. That's where the letters come from. But again, the pedestal is also an opportunity to establish some of that.
Yeah, no, I'm actually talking about the tall vertical that the Delano's in.
Yeah. And that was just you know, almost like a placeholder. You know, right? Concept.
Okay, I'll buy into that. It's a placeholder.
Yeah, it's a
I'll make
placeholder.
another one on that view. Originally, the plan that called for the Delano master plan called for like a gateway type structure. Gateways are not something that we really could do, which would be an odor. But this was kind of like you said, the Delano, distinguishing that it is the Delano district, kind of like a gateway might do, where you have something that would be hung that says Delano. That was kind of like an alternate. I thought it was a very good touch that I thought brought out a definite, hey, you're in Delano, and it's not just something ambiguous, and that way you know for people that aren't there what it is. So that was kind of something that I thought tied with the original plan that was supposed to be for the area.
So just full transparency, one of the reasons that I'm like, it could be this or it could be that, it's just prices. We haven't gotten this to a fabricator and figure out how much is it actually gonna cost, given all the inflation prices. Right, so I kept it somewhat open.
I wonder if there's a way to say Delano without going Delano.
Right.
I'm just, come on.
No, I'm with you. And again, keep in mind, this is 30%, right? It's,
Exactly.
we're looking at a concept. Yeah.
Settle that a little bit.
When we're talking about the kinetic sculptures, and we went back to, I was just looking at some of Armando's references as far as the Wichita leaders and warriors. And in these pictures, I see that people have different numbers of feathers in their headdress. So I wonder if there's some research that can be done. There's some meaning tied to the number of feathers that are clustered together. Like 3 means something, 1 means something, or 2 means something. I think that would be really opportunity to continue to pay homage to the Wichita people and to, make more meaning to how this is laid out across the board.
Yeah, that's very interesting. To take it deeper.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. We'll look into that.
Keith, thanks, movie. Steve, could I put you on spot as vice chair? Does Armando, given your relationship with the project and pull for a vote, if you're ready to do that.
Yeah, I guess at this point, unless there are any other questions or comments, look for a motion.
Make a motion to receive.
There's a second? Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed?
Abstain.
Great comments. Thank you so much.
I'm from over there, but I'm like,
I know, I heard it over there, but I wasn't looking.
Thanks, Ken. Okay, so last item, well, no. Last item to discuss as far as the projects is the Country Acres Dog Park. And they're looking, final approval, right? So everything to do.
Here we go. Okay, so some of you weren't around during April 1st of this year, which is when we first presented this project for the concept approval and feedback. So today we are going to re-present this, just to get background for the people who weren't here before, and just, we already received that feedback and we worked changing as per the feedback. So now we're doing the same thing here. So this is for the Country Acres Dog Park. Just to give you a background on that. So the approved 10-year CIP program contains $750,000 for the construction of a dog park in Country Acres Park, and of which $50,000 was allocated for art. And just, that Bowman Company was hired for the design. And yeah, it's basically what I said about the April 1st. So just so that you know the context of the site, the park is located near the intersection between Ridge Road and Central Avenue. And you can see here in the just on my mouse here. So each region of the city contains a dog park close by, and the west here needed one, the west side of the city needed one, which is why the project exists. So just a bit of a context on what was there. So there used to be tennis and basketball courts. They were in terrible condition and they were demoed recently. And also the city has acquired this bit of land over here on the south. I think it's around 1,700 yards in area. And it's just, to add a parking lot. So this is where the entrance will be. And this is mainly where the park installation is going to happen. So background on the RFQ. So we issued an RFQ on December last year, and we thought we got 22 applications, but we had to kind of reduce them to 6 just to, because some of them didn't meet the required geographic criteria, which is they have to exist locally. So 6 applications, and then we honed it down to 3 by the selection committee, and the proposals were reviewed on March, and Mr. Conrad Snyder was awarded the project. So the selection committee consisted of 3 City of Wichita staff members, 1 from Bachman, 1 from the district advisory board, 1 NEA grant artist, and the representing council member. So this is just the initial concept that was presented on April 1st. You can see 2 dogs in opposite, corners, like an entranceway kind of. If you want, I can give you the floor if you like.
Certainly. Yeah, well, I'm Conrad Snyder, and thank you for having us back. I do medium to large scale ceramic work. I have a number of pieces around town, and I can talk a little bit about those. But the idea here was to have the dogs kind of welcoming people in entryway, entries, creating a gateway to the park. You can see the scale there. They would be around 8 feet tall and sitting on pedestals. Material is ceramic, cone tan, high temperature clay. It's a good, hard, strong material. I can talk more about that. And then surrounded by pedestals that they would be sitting on. So some of our comments that we had were that they wanted to spread apart a little bit more and have a little more dynamic interaction between the two, plus a little more opportunity for people to interact with the dogs themselves. So we began to look at how we were going to do that. And let's see, next slide. So this is putting one of the dogs in a down playing position, expanding the pedestals that they were sitting on, so making them larger, 5 feet instead of 4 feet, which provides more sitting actual round pieces, so people can sit right next to them or climb on pieces. I love clay, and I love touching clay. I love when people do touch clay. I'm a very hands-on person. Clay really lends itself to that in public art and just in general. So I actually brought some physical pieces here. You can look at some of the colors and textures. If you want to pass those around, or if you want to look at them. So the dogs, having one dog down, I think would provide a lot of potential for kids to climb on it, put on it back kind of in that saddle area and ride it like a horse. And they're perfectly fine being treated that way. Other issues with the clay would, and being in a dog park, are the dogs are going to be marking it. There's going to be pee on them, and that shouldn't affect the clay at all. Stainless steel. The collars and the top of the pedestals would be brushed in stainless steel with some kind of added carriage bolts welded in. I guess that I'd call it. The balls, I changed that. Originally I had kind of tennis ball colors, so we kind of made those a little more colorful, 2.5 feet, 3 feet tall. And again, something that could be sat on or climbed on. And anything else or questions? I can talk about, I've done several other.
Before questions, I just want to let you guys know where the installation will be. So it's like, basically, it's going to be still on the entrance of the park, and the one crouching is going to be here. It's going to be farther away from the fence, which gives more space for people to interact with the crouching dog, like you said. And also, I guess the style changed, like the style of the dogs, they look a lot more, child friendly, I suppose. I don't know.
Yeah, the initial one was just the drawing.
Yes.
Photos of a three-dimensional model.
Well, yeah, I guess there you have it. There it is. Okay. Thank you.
So several other of the projects I've been the Evergreen Park Library, 2 Stellas, ceramic Stellas that are there, and that's finishing up on 20 years, I think, that those have been there. The Nomar project, the tiles, ceramic tile murals, and finial pots that are on top of that bell tower type structure. And I've got a large ceramic animal at the Hanukkah children's park there. Oh, well, the main library. the boulders that are in front of that. So as a material, clay is a pretty good, strong material as long as you don't have sharp edges that can chip. But there's a company I did a project with, and they do vitrified clay sewer pipe. And we've all had pots in our backyards that have broken down and kind of flaked apart and didn't hold up. That's because the clay wasn't completely vitrified. So if the clay is completely vitrified, it won't soak up water and then the freeze-thaw type cycle break it down. But the company I was working with, we were doing a sculpture project there, but they do a 100-year written warranty on the clay pipe. It has a 1,000-year life expectancy. Clay pipe that the Romans made that's been in the ground for 2,000 years, been used every day and it's still being. So it's a really good, strong material. Touching it, climbing on it, all those things won't affect it over time. Graffiti, if that's a problem, if it ever gets on there, it can be cleaned off with chemicals. The glazed surface won't be affected by chemicals. It can't be sandblasted, but the city of Wichita doesn't sandblast anymore anyhow, so that's a moot point. But yeah, so there's several other projects that have been around town and held up quite well. When I do approach a project, I try and look at what's around, who's going to be using it, population and community, architecture of that structure, architecture of other structures in the community. In this case, it was the dog park and how that was going to be used, and wanted to make something that was fun and that people could interact with.
So open to questions. I'm just gonna put this here.
Any questions or comments on projects? And you're looking for final approval, right?
Yeah. Yep. Get started. Yes.
Will they be solid pieces or will they have,
Parts. Yes.
Yeah.
Very good question. I apologize. I forgot to talk about that. With clay, there are scale limitations depending on the size of your kiln. I have large kilns. They have still limitations. So that's one of the things where the stainless steel collar would actually be covering up the joint. So the body up to the head would be one piece, and then the head would be a second piece. So when we decided to do the down dog, that complicated things substantially. When you're building ceramic pieces, you can't really build any internal structure because they shrink so much. A piece like that is going to shrink more than a foot from the time it's made through all the drying and firing processes. So if there's an internal structure, it pushes itself apart. Potentially that. So with the smaller one, or the down dog, I had to figure out, I'm going to be able to hide the top of the joint between the body and the head with the collar, and then kind of the little shoulder area behind the front leg, there will be one joint there. Those joints I usually close up with urethane adhesive, which would be the same goop that gets put between the sidewalk and the brick wall. And it can be colored, and it does really well holding up with clay. And hopefully with the sort of visual activity of the fur on these pieces, it will hide that joint well. I don't like to have arbitrary joints just because that's the size my kiln was. Got to chop it in half. So yeah, very good question. But yeah, and they'll be, I thicken them up, and that's one of the reasons they take. This is going to be between 7 and 8 months from when we get a final approval till it's done. They'll be 1.5 to 2 inches thick, the clay. So they're pretty good and tough as far as people climbing on or a bottle or something.
Those are balls?
Those are balls.
How are they mounted?
What's that?
How are they mounted?
Are they mounted? So I do, just drill a couple of holes down into the sidewalk. There's a 5-inch slab here and mount, like a threaded, all thread inside the pieces when they get to the site, thread that in and anchoring cement, and stick it down and then seal around the outside with the urethane, that same urethane adhesive. So the footprint of the balls is probably going to be a foot or so. So it's not going to come all the way down to just a point. It'll have a little bit of a root to it just to make it strong enough. And likewise, the dogs will be lifted, have anchoring down into the pedestals, which will be concrete, and lower down in with the anchoring epoxy. And clay is a very strong material, but you want to be able to have some movement somewhere. So when somebody runs up and pushes on it, or a gust of wind hits it, you want some flexibility. Just like skyscrapers, they build some flexibility into it. So you want that energy to transfer, not instead of breaking the piece, you want it to transfer somewhere. So I always try and have some amount of flexibility in the mounting. So that pad of that urethane adhesive does that. It's almost not noticeable, but it's a little bit of movement to help us.
The balls also come with that 1,000-year guarantee.
What's that?
The balls came with a 1,000-year guarantee.
Years. Well, I hope I'm around that long to honor that, but.
There's no other questions or comments on this project. We have a motion to approve as presented.
Motion to approve.
Second,
I'll second.
any discussion on the motion? Oh, all in favor, say aye. Opposed? All right, well, passes unanimously. Thanks, Conrad. Good to see this wonderful fun dogs. Thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 7. We're almost.
I'm gonna go real fast here. We're gonna do this and get to lunch. So just an opportunity presented itself to adjust the CIP funding recommendation for next fiscal year for 25 in particular, that wanted to present to this group via the recommendation of Troy Heltman and Vice Mayor Ballard. So some background, we have 4 projects currently in the Parks Department slated for public art within the next 3 years. O.J. Watson Park, Chisholm Creek Park, Crystal Prairie Park, and the Nomar stage, some stuff there. O.J. Watson and Crystal Prairie are the only 2 that have funding allocated next fiscal year in 2025. A new project has presented itself that wasn't originally in our roster for consideration because it's not receiving CIP funding. So we don't really know about the projects unless they are put into CIP and the department director tells us. So there's a project at the Woodland Park in partnership with the North End Historical Society to do a history walk throughout that park. So it's not a CIP project, it's funded independently, but Vice Mayor Ballard and Troy were looking at ways to encourage that effort that's happening in Woodland Park with additional art elements. So in looking at the budget and talking with Troy about what's happening at Watson Park next year, he felt confidently that we could shift some of the funding dedicated to O.J. Watson Park to cover a sculptural element, a smaller piece in the $50,000 range. For reference, this dog park project that you just saw had a $50,000 budget to support that North End history walk to some capacity with the sculptural element. So the recommendation or the request from staff is to reallocate $50,000 from the O.J. Watson Park fund for 2025 and move that $50,000 from O.J. Watson. So they'll just split the budget between 2 years. We have plenty of funding that's unallocated in 2026 currently. Typically, we like to leave some unallocated funding because projects like this present themselves all the time. And so the remaining $50,000 from 2025 to be allocated to the Woodland Park project. Because it is our design council approved funding, it would still go through our normal processes that we've set in motion in terms of bidding out a competitive bid or proposal for art. But we would hope that would complement what the Northern Historical Society is doing. So that's just a recommendation from staff. It doesn't change any budgets in the long run. There's still about $500,000 $572,000 unallocated dollars in 2026. So this would just drop that down to 525 and change. So there's still a lot of funding to play around with in 2026. And we aren't really taking away from OJ Watson. We're just shifting that money out over the course of 2 years.
Any questions or comments on that agenda item?
Very straightforward.
Do you have a motion to allocate the funds?
Allocate the funds to Woodland Park as proposed.
Any discussion on the motion? Favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Thank you. And last item, number 8.
I have a couple FYIs or follow-ups from past meetings. Janet, do you want to take the first one?
Sure. When the Commerce Street St. Francis project presented their final designs for the John Harrison Megan Miller sculptural works, a question arose as to whether the recording that was going to be taking place within these interactive sculptures, whether a disclaimer would be required or some other action that the passerby would give consent. And so we passed it by law, and Nate Johnson reviewed it, and I'll just going to read what he says. He does not think any kind of disclaimer is legally required because the recordings would happen in a public setting. So there's no expectation of privacy. However, he does think that it might be advisable to include a disclaimer sign that functions as consent to the recording. And that information has been passed on to the project team.
And just flying through some other updates. Obviously, you're aware that there's new members to this group. There's still 3 unappointed seats to this body. The mayor is sitting on a handful of applications and has also requested some additional applications. So as early as this Thursday night, which is our next city council meeting, additional members may be appointed. We do not yet know what those appointments would be and if they will be made on Thursdays, but hopefully by the next meeting, we have a fully appointed body. If not, we still have this body to work with. So that's no news on that front, other than there's still 3 unappointed seats currently. And then I just have one more, I almost went to the punch already. One more as may arise, the Jackie Robinson sculpture will be celebrated tonight. It was reinstalled over the weekend, and Ella's probably got to run here to do some finishing up over there. But tonight at 6 o'clock is the celebration of the Jackie Robinson sculpture and more. So some new additions to that area have been included. So design council, you're welcome to attend and encourage the activity that's happening in that area. That sculpture is one that's technically not part of our public art collection as it currently stands, but something that we might see at a later agenda date. Did I get that wrong?
It is planned to be gifted to the city.
Yeah, as soon as it's gifted, we will come to you for an official accession. So that way it enters into our insurance policy, et cetera. More to come on that, but that's all I got.
Well, thank you everyone for hanging along this 2-hour-long meeting. Welcome everyone to the board and thank you for participating. It's really great for everyone to be involved in this. So thank you for your service and your time. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
If you need your parking validated, see Janet.
Yeah, see me. Hello. Let me just.
Meeting.
You know what? It's out at the Phillips.
Well, and this is what I was saying. This is what I was used to. It's usually long.
They all went on me.
Not yet. I'm waiting. Hold on.
That's been the longest.
At orientation. One house. And
I was like,
went out in the water.
I was like, that's not real.
I think we've only had, oh my gosh, come on. I think we've only had a 2-hour meeting.
I mean, it would have been you. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Where'd you move to?
And I'm the one.
Sorry, guys, I should have.
During the pandemic, but when I joined the design council, I lived here.
Oh, that's right.
So
Did you live in Wichita?
We're curious.
I
but-
did live in Wichita. I moved to Wichita, but then we bought a house in Newton. Yes. Yeah, so it happened while I was.
Say you had to have
council.
lived here when you were appointed, because I'm.
Yes. Yeah, so I moved, during these years. During these years. And Newton, we couldn't walk away from this house. It has its own personality and it's almost 100 years old. We're gonna have to have a birthday party for it. It's like, you can't knock all the walls down and do something.
No.
It has its own
I got it.
character.
It's cute.
Yeah, my kids can walk to school. I wouldn't do that in Wichita necessarily. They can walk, so.
There you go.
I like it.
Very good.
Bye. Oh, this is fancy. What you doing? You don't have a sticker or anything? What's gonna happen?
He's gonna scan it.
Now you scan it when you go out and it's
The
already.
kids do this last time.
This is fancy. No stickers. Okay.
Ellen or Ramona, I'm curious what you think of the RF, because I think ours was our official RFQ going.
And you still scan this the same way when you
Like
leave,
on the front end.
but it should just say.
Go second one, maybe?
Go check.
This is
I think that was cool. That's a cool idea.
Is it too much, or is it like helpful to have us on the front end?
I mean, it's obviously a lot, it was a really big one, right? Because there were 3 libraries and all that. I think it makes a difference. We get to
They did it.
Get eyes on
say
it.
all the things instead.
Yeah.
Instead of,
It makes sense rather than change it on the back end as the artist goes.
Well, then you don't have to ask when the artist gets here, like, why did you make these decisions, when like, you know what they are.
I think it would be good to get feedback from them. It seemed like they felt like it was beneficial to them to have input. I mean, because
The stronger we can make the call, the better the proposal we get.
Yeah.
Well, and
Allison,
the library branches RFQ is complex.
It is.
right, because each one is
It's-
different
It's a,
and each
it's
one's
a
got its
monster.
own.
And it's been a little bit hard to.
Allison thinks that way anyway. Her background is healthcare architecture. So she's very detailed oriented and just process driven anyways. But I think something like that would help someone like her or someone not like her, honestly.
It's gonna take a lot of work on the committee side. You know what I mean? To have all those different, potentially individual, applications. It's gonna take a lot of work on the committee side too.
Well, Allison and I will go through them first.
Yeah, okay.
That's Jamie's.
We will reduce, we will.
Library director to
we
make sure
will
there's continuity.
reduce the,
Yeah, that's right.
I think that's where it comes
She's got the big vision, the master plan
Yeah.
for libraries and everything, so.
Good.
there you go.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, bye. Thanks, Jenna.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for stepping up.
Thank you both for sitting down.
I know. How was the packed agenda?
Yeah, I was like,
That's
amazing.
a-
That's an introduction to, the design council.
Well, you know,
Like, it's not always like this.
I'll say you know Cortez playing that too. He knew if he showed up.